going to find yourself getting passed by multiple cars. I mentioned earlier on, so you are in a very precarious situation, but he often finds himself in these places. Doesn't qualify as well as he races. Only
Up front, they are getting with Lee Aberdeen and Luca Varani, not very far apart at all here. But I just want to see how Alistair Haight deals with Marcello Kessler coming around the old hairpin.
And I would say it's not the best decision they've ever made, just not having done that under the safety car, really.
Yeah, they're taking their pit stop strategies from Ferrari lately, isn't it? What's going on?
In turn one, just too much gas on them, too much feet on the loud pedal, and unfortunately he's dropped him all the way down the order. But Philip Hammer is out in front by an 8.91 seconds. Oh, Dan Michael is a wall there, sir. And it definitely doesn't want to be hitting that earlier on as well.
Typical, the understeer is in the dirty air through that final corner because it's such a long corner and you get dragged off into the grass very easily. He'll have the slipstream down towards the chicane. Peterson was briefly alongside, but that slipstream has saved him and kept him in third.
Yeah, Varani now lost a little bit of time to Aberdeen, about half a second. Peterson is Pite's pushed more and forward up ahead. He's got out of line. It's now Pite going to have a go. Werrell, don't push him off. He's in the championship fight. Jack Werrell chasing down Carl Jacklin. Further down, Rob Williams and Chris Barnes.
Sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's come back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such up. He's left on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Moving on to the back end of Phil Jocelyn. So there's been a lot of movers and shakers in this first 2 laps here for race.
Absolutely serious racing league. Everybody's a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's all about the entertainment. So I hope
everybody is enjoying themselves out there in the chat. We know that Ron is enjoying himself watching Burger King machines off into the grass a little bit there. Is that really bunching up now? You are live.
Hello everybody and welcome to the TVG GRE6 series here from the Tanso Racing Group. We're ready to go racing again for here at Alton Park, I should say. This is round number 4 of our championship and we're getting in towards the second half of the season now. It's not long until we know the name of our champions in just a few weeks' time. It's myself, Ian Illyrian, Bradley Dalton along with me for this round of the championship. Good to be alongside you again, Brad. This circuit, I've got to say, does divide opinion based on people I've spoken to. I quite like it. I've met quite a lot of people who don't. What do you think we're going to see here tonight from this unique racetrack?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Ewan, it's always good to have you in the booth with me. And as far as... It's a German track, so of course, someone loves it, someone doesn't. I just did a German track with James yesterday of one certain Nordschleife. And we had very mixed opinions shared from the drivers there about the Nordschleife of all tracks. So I'm not surprised to see a German track have a mixed opinion. I think this track is going to produce some good racing. It's an interesting setup. Fun fact, there's a corner named McDonald's. So, I mean, when you have a corner named McDonald's on a track, you kind of have to enjoy it. It's not bad. I've seen several people have some moments like Curtis Matthews in the background just did, if anyone got that. Hopefully not. But I think this is going to be a good race. It's always a good race with the Tanso drivers and the TVG drivers. The GR86 has just produced good racing, regardless of the track you're at.
Absolutely, and I'm sure the McDonald's corner will push the Americans on towards a good result. There's a few of them in this race here today. I've just chatted a little bit about the standings before we get into qualifying, which is only about 90 seconds away. You can see the practice times on the left-hand side, and no surprise, Scott McFall is fastest because he's at the top of the pro standings right now. 61 points is his advantage already over Andrew Sharp and Scott Brown, the Pro-Am champion from last season, moving on upwards to third in the standings after Navarra at round 3 1 week ago. Peter Duke is leading by far the most interesting of the championships, I've got to say. Just 4 points between him and Andy White. Andy White has got a great time in practice at the moment. If you can replicate that in the upcoming qualifying session, he will be laughing, I think. In the AM standings, it is 43 points separating Terry Atkinson and Tim Walters. Terry Atkinson has had a very good start to the season indeed, and the AM Championship, which was quite close after 2 rounds, a little bit less close after 3. Sean Atkinson, though, is the one who's currently topped the times there. I know there's very little way of telling Sean and Terry apart in our tower on the left-hand side. We'll try and keep you updated throughout the day as much as possible. Wondering how much practice is actually going to matter in terms of their qualifying times here, but I would have thought qualifying will be a big focus for everybody once again. For all the love and hate there is for this circuit, I think one thing that is agreed on is, despite the fact that the GR86s do produce scrub racing everywhere, as you rightly say, it is going to be relatively difficult to overtake. It's not the easiest circuit in the world to go side by side, and so this qualifying session will be interesting. It will be very important as well for everybody who can get up towards the front and hopefully avoid early chaos and utilise their speed to get a good result here in race 1 coming up in about 10 minutes' time.
Yeah, race 1 is going to be very important. And also, I know this had been mentioned before about not being able to tell the difference between the Atkinsons. So if you now check your timing table on the left, there's an S Atkinson and a T Atkinson, and I believe that will help everyone tell those two apart. Apologies for it taking me so long to get that in place, but now that it's there, I will not be changing it, and it will stay there for a while. Practice is over, and I'm excited to see how the drivers handle qualifying. That's always one of the times that I see drivers either really show off their skills or they struggle, and with the practice grid as mixed up as it was there, I do think qualifying is going to get interesting. Everybody very quickly coming out here for this lone qualifying session, and we should see some good times come through here on this track. And I think the biggest problem for some people is going to be track limits more than anything, and that again tends to be a little bit of a theme here. We're going to follow, who do we want to follow for this first flying lap? Should we follow Scott McFall here?
Up to you, really. Terry Atkinson's out first, so he will put a time on the board. He'll put the marker down for everybody by the looks of things. That's what you can see on the bottom there of your screen. You're able to see everybody sort of who's going to cross the line first is furthest to the left, if you see what I mean. So, or next. Crossing the line next will be furthest to the left. So that's how you can follow things below on your screen. But yeah, let's have a look at somebody on board through their opening lap of the session, because it is going to be interesting to learn a little bit about this circuit, if anything, and find out how to go quickly around here. Say, such a unique track, and that's not a great way to start it, unfortunately. But it doesn't matter particularly. These are just the out laps, then they'll have the 3 laps. And actually, it's a bit of a squeeze getting them all in this session, but they've got 10 minutes to do 3 laps. With your out lap, that should mean it will take you about 7 minutes, and they can just about squeeze it in.
Yeah, that they do, and we're riding on board with Terry Atkinson here. I'm curious to see how Terry handles things here in the AM class, and you can see going through, and seems comfortable, but seems uncomfortable at the same time. This is the track that really tests how these GR86s handle, and this is going to be your start-finish line. It's going to fly you around for a very quick lap. We've got several drivers going around. Scott McFall, no surprise, a purple Sector 3, just winding up into the start of his lap, putting in good times, and that's what you're seeing here in the bottom.
Then he gets set for the first chicane and getting a little bit loose immediately, going a little bit wide to get a late apex through turn 2. That gives you a nice run in towards turn 3. Hasserode, which is a standard hairpin, really. A little bit of camber here, but it doesn't mean that you can't go around the outside in the race, which is a good thing. Try and get it turned. Oh, don't run too wide. You will find yourself in the grass on the outside, and you will find yourself with an invalidated lap time. The triple left-hander comes up next. First bit flat out, lift off bit for the second bit. By the third bit, you're braking really for the next hairpin, which comes up. It's a pretty difficult hairpin to get yourself turned for. Want to hit the first apex really, and then get a late apex. Haven't really managed it here, I'm afraid. Oh, and we're in the gravel. Oh, I should say, with Terry Atkinson in towards the chicane. Next up, followed by the McDonald's curve. Don't know why it's called McDonald's. Doesn't seem to be one on the outside of the corner. And they make their way out of the turn onto the back straight, where they hit top speed. If not top speed, then second top speed after turn 1. Then into the shell curve. Fast right-hander, committed right-hander, although you do have to go down to third. Set yourself up, bring yourself to the right so you can set up the left-hander and get a good exit from here. Then into the penultimate corner, where you're avoiding the sausage curve, but you do want to clip it. Then the final corner for Terry Atkinson. He will not set the benchmark. Instead, that will be Peter Duke, and I don't think this lap time's even going to count for Atkinson. But it's all going to be redundant because Scott McFall's going to come across the line right at about the same time. What's that lap time going to be for the Pro Championship leader? A 1:36.6. That's what everyone else has to beat.
Yeah, that's a big statement on the board early, especially when you consider that the next lap time is 0.8 of a second back here as we continue around with Scott McFall, and he is still going to be trying to put in faster times here as we follow through. Nobody's even remotely close to his times here that I'm seeing. Scott Brown comes across with a 1:37.2. That puts in something to stand for, but I see nobody else even remotely close to his sector time. So big stance there for him. Jack Holland seems to be putting down somewhat decent times, but he invalidates on the end of his lap. We'll jump back to Jack Holland here, who is actually off the track. What happened to Jack Holland there? Well, let's find out.
Yep, this is that's the start of his lap. This is the incident itself. Looks like he's dropped it with too much right foot here as he got into the... Well, he's up on the curb, but nothing really too bad, and hits the wall. No damage in this series, don't forget, but he still feels the need to go back to pit lane, and he'll go back out for one more outlap, then he'll get one chance, basically, so that's not a great start for him. A very good evening to everyone who's in YouTube chat and watching along here this evening. Somebody asking, how long does the race last? Well, you're actually in luck, there's 2. Race 1 is coming up after this qualifying session, 5 minutes time, 20 minutes in length. Then we'll reverse the top 6 and we'll do a 25-minute race 2. So that's what we've got coming up for you tonight. A couple of good races, and they're always good races. It's GR86 Racing. So, of course it is. Terry Atkinson might be about to set his first lap time of the day, and he goes over the line there, and he goes 11th overall. That's 3rd in the AM standings. Scott Bell also improving nicely in the AM standings. 2 green sectors for him. That suggests he is going on a personal best, although the final sector doesn't look like it's gone so well for him. Curtis Matthews goes up to 2nd place, although he's immediately eclipsed by Michael Vester. Alan McCain going quickly as well in the pro class, along with Mark Brown. These two look like they're both going to improve and go up towards the front here. Especially for Mark Brown. What's he going to do here at the end of the lap? Nothing. It doesn't look like it. Well, that's disappointing. He's off the road and so stays where he is. That's slightly disappointing. We've also got 2 Browns in the field, by the way, in case you haven't noticed, but you can tell them apart with the E on the end of the name for Mark Brown. Scott Brown is up in 2nd position at the moment with his own name. So there you go. Into the final corner again for... Looks like Jack Holland again. Yeah, making his way over and as I say, that lap as an out lap per se will count. So effectively, this is his only chance to get his lap in because you only get 3 attempts in this series.
Yeah, and for Jack Holland, that's a lot of pressure to be under with where he's at now, trying to put in basically one and done qualifying. Not at all where you want to find yourself. Scott McFall up front, though, another purple Sector 1, a little slow through Sector 2, but he's coming on the end of his lap. Is Scott McFall going to eclipse himself? Well, he purpled the 3rd sector, but he lost a little bit in the middle. Scott McFall is absolutely setting up to... in Scott McFall fashion, be the one to beat today. Looks like pretty much everyone is finishing where they're at here. Peter Woodmore improving a bit there, comes up into 7th place. And Ewan, I will say, it looks like these drivers really clean through qualifying. I only see a couple of people that have had track limits issues, and everyone else has been very on the pace. We've got 4 drivers going through, or 3 drivers that haven't been able to put in a clean lap, with one of them being Mark Proctor, who just now started into qualifying session.
Yeah, Holland ran wide there, so I'm not sure this is going to count. John Kenny is another one who is just coming up towards the line at the moment. He's one of the AM drivers at the very back end of the field. Here he is, coming out of the final corner. Does he finally get a time on the board here? John Kenny, he does. Slots into 22nd, at least he gets a lap on the board. Jack Holland might not have done, that's the point here. He's in the background now, making his way up to the line. He's still pushing here, which suggests that he's either just seeing what he could have done, or he didn't get an off track. He got away with it. I'd be surprised if it's the second one and he got away with it, though, and indeed he did not. Final times to come through. Tim Walters, first of all, from 17th overall, then John Johnston in 21st overall. Both AM drivers down towards the back. Walters improves to 16th place. That is 4th in the AM class. John Johnston goes over the line as well. Does he improve? No, he can't go any quicker than his best lap time. So it's up now to Mark Proctor to entertain us for the final couple of minutes here. He's the only driver still out on the circuit. This will be his only chance because he's left it all too late. Let's hope that this is a good lap. It doesn't look like it. That looked like an out lap to me, actually. So it looks like he's not going to have time at all with only 1:20 on the clock.
Yeah, Mark Proctor will be relegated to a last row start, along with this driver here, Jack Holland, who is trying to get some sort of a lap in. He's got half a lap to try to put something down here if he can keep this car on track. And it seems like that was close, but I don't think that was invalidated. But it's unfortunate when you're a driver in this situation and you kind of put the pressure on yourself from running just small off tracks through qualifying, not being able to get a solid lap in, and you find yourself starting at the back. It's going to be a tall ask for Jack Holland, the pro driver here, who will have to work his way all the way up to the front as they stand.
Yep. Starting in 4th, he's 4th in the standings, I should say, at the end of the opening 3 rounds of the championship. Oh, he does have an extra lap here. What is going on there? Well, okay. I thought he was out of laps. Apologies. He's clearly not out of laps. He's 7th place. Apologies for that. I really thought he was done there. Anyway, seems he's been afforded an extra one, or indeed one of his out laps didn't count, which would surprise me, but there we go. Mark Proctor into the final few corners, but time will expire on him, and he will be the only driver not to set a time in that case, and he will start from 24th. So that's qualifying done here at Oschersleben. Let's have a look at the starting grid as we get ready for the first of 2 races tonight. 20 minutes, first of all, in this opener. And it's Scott McFall from the front, 6 tenths quicker than Scott Brown in qualifying. Neil Kennedy puts in a good lap to go. Third, Andy White, the Pro-Am pole sitter, 4th, ahead of Newton Carvalho and Peter Duke, sharing row 3. It's Jack Holland and Mark Brown on row 4, ahead of Peter Woodmore and Dan Forster, who round out the top 10. Lee Rylance is 11th, ahead of Harry Price. The Am pole sitter, Sean Atkinson, is just after him, followed by Alan McCain. Michael Vester and Curtis Matthews round out an all-AM row 8, with Tim Walters and Aidan Hatfield behind them. Terry Atkinson and Scott Bell round out the top 20, with Stephen Weld, John Johnston, John Kenny, and Mark Proctor, the only driver not to set a time, on the board in last. So, 20 minutes ahead of us. Scott McFall is going to be difficult to deny here, I feel, but behind it's going to be an interesting battle.
I do agree, and it is typically the case here in the first heats of these Tanso GR86 races is Scott McFall. If he can get away, he will run away. And then from there, that is where all the carnage from about 4th place back begins. We see lots of very, very close battles develop, and we'll see how things go once these drivers get themselves together and get their way out. Because once we get that green flag, which we are waiting on now, that is where everything will start.
Let's see, it's going to be a very interesting 20 minutes indeed. The lights are about to come on for round 4 of the TVG GR86 series. And race number 7, the green flag waves. We are underway here from Oschersleben, and it's a good start from all. Everybody gets away rather cleanly on the way towards turn number 1. Can Brown stay alongside McFall and really put the sword to him here? The championship leader, as they all need to here in this championship. McFall defends to the outside of turn 1, breaks early for turn 2, right up the curb on the inside line, and around the outside goes Scott Brown, but it's a very, very long way round. He'll have another look towards turn 3, no doubt, but it's going to be difficult for him. He's going to have to go late on the brakes, and he's not willing to do so. Neil Kennedy follows behind, followed by Andy White, then Peter Duke, who's made up a place and got up to 5th.
Yeah, and these top 5 moving through early on, holding through. Brown very much sticking to the back of McFall, trying to follow through early on in this lap. Wants to be very close if possible, and wants to try to hold on and look for a shot, because it is possible to find the chink in Scott McFall's armor where you can. The question is just, you've got to find it. And as they go through around towards McDonald's for the first time, they get through nice and clean. Nothing too unfortunate happening. Nilton Carvalho getting passed here by Woodmore. Woodmore making his way through, and up in the front, they are going to stay single file. But here in the battle for 8th, it will rage on.
What a fantastic battle this is from about 8th on backwards, side by side, nearly for the lead in AM. It's still Harry Price leading the way ahead of Sean Atkinson. You see them in the background there. Price just following a battle between Forster and Rylands. The pros and pro-ams, don't forget, are very mixed up in this series. The AMs often stay behind them. As into the pit lane comes Michael Vester. He must have jumped the start, I'm afraid, because Michael Vester has taken the long trip round the final corner, and I'm afraid he has gone back to pit lane. Out over the line for the leaders and for everyone for the first time. Carvalho and Woodmore are side by side again here. It's time in towards turn number 1, and it's this time Peter Woodmore who gets through, but not for long. Carvalho down the inside and into the side of him through turn 2. Woodmore will hold on to the inside line though for turn 3, and should hold on as a result to the position. There's slight contact, there's a bit more, and Carvalho pushed on the outside is not going to get the place.
Just enough racing room given there for clean, hard racing to be given, and I put very, very heavy emphasis on the hard racing being given there. You saw the little bumps, the little wiggles, and the little bit of tap. I'm shocked if this was real life, you'd see the little scrapes down the side where those cars tapped, and in the end it is that 289 of Woodmore that is holding off the pro driver of Carvalho in the background as they come through McDonald's yet again here. 17 minutes left to go in this heat. We don't run to a lap count, we run to the time limit. 17 minutes to go, and you see the flashing lights, and I tell you what, if you are Peter Woodmore, you just do not care right now. You are leading a big train of pros, and you have a mission to go on, so he is just going to hold this in place.
Still 3rd in Pro-Am, which is, it is good, but he's not going to gain any points for fending these guys off, or indeed for catching the guys ahead, because he's around so many pros that he can't gain any points. These two classes, of course, score points from separate trees, if you like, so they don't cross over, and that does make it interesting when you see these interclass battles. Again, Carvalho on the inside at turn 1. We saw it not work for him one lap ago, and it's not going to work for him this time either. He goes round the outside of turn 2 this time and can't quite hold it there, although he's got a good run, and he's hit Woodmore. He's hit Woodmore straight through the back, and Peter Woodmore, I'm afraid, spins to the inside. He'll get back on the road again, but I'm afraid he's well down the order, and that was all of the making of Nilton Carvalho.
Yeah, Carvalho was not at all happy with where he found himself there.
He's been hit again there, so we'll stay with here is the incident itself. I mean, that's pretty obvious, I think. Carvalho hits Woodmore, and then just have a look at this down towards turn 3, by the way. We just caught the end of it, or the start of it live. he gets drilled in the side by someone down here. Almost as if they weren't expecting him to be there. Not sure who it is, but have a look at this. Diving in, drilled in the side, and Peter Woodmore's first race goes from bad to worse.
And that was Scott Bell that drilled him in the side there. I wasn't expecting that, and something big has happened here while we were looking at that. This is when Mark Proctor and Adrian Hadfield, I believe, going through. What's happened with them? Side-by-side action, and they just connected with each other and went through. Yeah, I mean, Peter Woodmore's not going to be happy about that at all, but if you are Nilton Carvalho, I mean, you can only flash your lights so many times to get around the different class car, but at the same time, everyone's racing for the overall position, even though you're racing in class. I don't think dumping him was necessary. I think that was just a case of someone's patience ran out.
Yep, it very much did on that occasion. Well, Scott McFall still leads. He's got 6 drivers behind him, though, and he's not exactly got away. Now, finally, he pulls a 1 second margin, but it's taken him 5 minutes here. I mean, maybe the slipstream and the drafting that you see a lot of in GR86 style racing, maybe that's keeping everybody in touch here for the lead of this race.
I mean, you do have long straightaways here, and I'll actually bring up the track map in the top right. You do have some pretty long straightaways sections, so it does not surprise me to see these cars fairly closely grouped together and sticking through. There's not a lot of technical sections where you can really run these cars to the edge of handling and get away. So if you're, looking to take an advantage of a corner and of any technical sections, and that's your skill, well, you're not going to really get the run there. A lot of drafting and straightaway run is going to play advantage, but also I think Scott McFall might be trying to play it safe 2 or 3% here just to get to the end. May not be overdriving this car and may just be sort of settling in, running through, but everybody in that top 7 look fairly evenly matched on pace, and Carvalho 3.1 seconds off of this lead pack of 7 and is not making headway at all. Something has happened here. Elaine McCain off the road here on the final corner, gets back going, but is going to drop back a little bit further behind Walters into 14th place.
Sure what's gone on there at all, I'm afraid, for McCain, who drops to the very back. Meanwhile, side-by-side just up ahead, Forster and Rylands. Price is closing in on these two, and that means that Sean Atkinson also is closing in on these two. Not particularly ideal. Forster does look like he's gotten through, and here we go. The AM leading battle looks like it's getting closed up because Price can't go anywhere, and Atkinson can close the gap.
Yeah, and Price is in a very interesting position right now. Again, you got to watch the class differences there because Price is behind Rylands, who's a pro, who's behind the pro-am of Forster. And for Price, you have Sean Atkinson back behind, who's got some good pace. What do you do in this situation? Do you just kind of settle in? Do you play on the defensive card? Do you plan to attack Sean Atkinson? What do you do here? And that is something that I don't have a good answer to be honest, because I am not the driver. I am up in the booth. So we'll let these guys figure out what they do here. But Price looks very fast, very feisty here early on, and we'll see where Price can put himself.
In towards the final sector, the shell curve, fastest corner on the circuit, and in towards the next left-hander. Price continues to trail Rylands. Oh, that's a big slide in the background there for Walters. Is that Tim Walters or is it Alan McCain? I think it was McCain, actually. He caught it, though, so he's okay. Still 14th position for him as of right now. Price remains very close indeed to Rylands. These are the closest battles on the circuit, just under halfway through this opening race of the evening. The TVG GR86 series here live from Oschersleben. Price versus Atkinson for the lead in the AM standings. Price hasn't been at any of the races so far in the 86 series, but Sean Atkinson certainly has, although he already trails Terry Atkinson by a good 58 points as things stand.
Yeah, big difference in the points there, and if you're Price and this is going to be your first race in here in AMs and you show up and show out, that's a good statement to make here early on. I would be very happy if I was Harry Price in the position. I want to check back in with our Pro-Am leader, Mr. Andy White here, because one Jack Holland, who we talked about a lot during qualifying, has closed up right to the back of him here, and looks like he is on pace for a move as we see Mark Brown decide to do a little bit of a yard work out of McDonald's, go a little bit wide and go through. But you do have Holland here, the pro driver, looking for that 4th place run. And don't forget, into the feature race, we invert the top 6. So right now, Mark Brown would be starting on pole as they continue through, and it's interesting to see how that strategy plays in. We tend to see guys be a little bit safer here in this first heat race than they are the second race, but with exactly 10 minutes to go, these guys are going to be looking for some more position, some more points, and there's plenty of battling left to go here.
Plenty still to happen here, that's for sure. In towards turn 2 they go. Holland's looking for that position, mainly because he wants to catch those up ahead and find more people in his class. Alan McCain wants to do the same. He's behind the top 3 now in armour, though, and this could be difficult. I mean, the spread of the field in this series is not that large. The fastest lap of the race so far is a 36.9. The fastest lap in the AM class so far is a 38.1. So what's that? 1.2 seconds from the fastest lap overall to the fastest lap in AM. That is not a big spread of field at all. And that just shows you these AMs are not easy to pass, even if you are a designated pro driver.
That is very, very true. You've got to be careful all the way through. And look at Curtis Matthews. We don't give Curtis Matthews a lot of screen time here. And he tends to find himself a little bit further back in the pack. But look at him putting some pressure on Terry Atkinson, trying to make a pass happen here, having Proctor following behind. That's a good catch there in the background. And Curtis Matthews, week after week, has shown more consistency, more comfort in the car, and is continuing to impress. And you see him here. He's trying to chase down Terry Atkinson for a top 15 run in the heat. And even further, if he can make it happen, he's right there on the back, and this battle is going to go. Does he dare for a break into shell corner? He does not, and he is going to continue through. But for a moment, it looked like he had that pass going. Up in the front, we've gotten into a 3 or 4 car setup here with Kennedy going behind Brown, behind White, behind Holland, and we see these 4 all running into the first couple of corners here, and they are starting to close up as Scott McFall, in proper Scott McFall fashion, has ran away 1.9 seconds the gap, almost 2 seconds, and has decided he is going to make Heat 1 his little race.
Looks like it, as there's a brief dropout for Bell further down, but he's back again. So all looks okay there for Scott Bell. Gained 1 place so far today, still running in 19th place. Who else is close to one another? Mark Brown and Peter Duke. That's quite an important battle for the pole position in race 2, as you explained a couple of moments ago. The winner of this battle will be on pole for the next race. So not only will Peter Duke want to get through just so he can get closer to Andy White, his main championship rival, but actually he'll want to be on pole for the second race.
Yeah, we're getting to that point where we're going to start seeing Peter Duke get a bit more feisty to look for that position. And again, he's not only going to be looking at the idea of being pole, being front row, being somewhere up, and look at him. He's thinking about a dive up the inside is Peter Duke, and Mark Brown just being right there in the right place. Peter Duke not able to capitalize, but Peter Duke also has the championship to think about. He needs to make sure that he's finding himself in a good position for the championship and continuing forward, because as it stands in Pro-Am right now, he's got a very, very fine margin to continue ahead. So we'll have to see how that plays out, because these two are, Duke and White, that is, are going to be swapping championship positions by the end of this, if this is how this goes and if this is how they finish in the feature race.
Close for second place, close for 4th place, and for 6th. It's all going on up here in the top 10. Changed as well for 13th for Sean Atkinson, finally overtaken by Alan McCain down towards turn number 1. And Atkinson's not going to be delighted about that, I don't think. He's been overtaken by Tim Walters in the meantime. And Atkinson now is only a position ahead of Terry Atkinson, who leads this championship, with Michael Vester further down the field after a early pit stop for him, and with Tim Walters now the only other driver ahead of Terry Atkinson. It's actually turned into a decent opening race for Atkinson, but of course with where the AM drivers finish, the reverse grid doesn't particularly affect them, so they'll be starting in exactly the same positions in which they finish here, and so Terry Atkinson's going to have all the work to do all over again here as Lee Rylands has got off the road at the McDonald's corner, I think, and Price has gotten through on him, really consolidating that AM lead.
Yeah, and watching that AM lead go through, we'll jump back and see what happened to Lee Rylands really quick as we have him going around and through and hard on the brakes, and it looks like that Pepsi car is just a little feisty, and he runs just a little wide into the grass. I didn't know Pepsi made lawnmowers, but he joins very, very safely, gets back in the flow of traffic, and gives that position up. We've had a couple of other moments go through, but look at Neil Kennedy here trying to get the run on Scott Brown. He looks up the inside into one. He's hard on the brakes, not able to make this one happen, but man, he was within a tenth. He looked like he could have had the dive up the inside, but was not able to capitalize. Neil Kennedy with 4 minutes 50 seconds to go, trying to push through, and we got to keep our eyes a little bit further back at this all-important P6 between Brown and Duke. How does that end up? This is going to be a close one as well. And then, again, battles all through the field. Watch out for Atkinson with Matthews and Proctor. That's a battle for P14 that is continuing to develop and show a strong run here. Mark Proctor, of course, trying to look for the pass on Curtis Matthews. Curtis Matthews with a great showing today. Great defensive driving as they go through. Little bit of a wiggle from both of them, and that's going to stack things up. Curtis Matthews going to go up the inside, going to go hard on the brakes, and look at Proctor trying to make his way through as well. As again, another wide move there from Adrian Hadfield. Or not Adrian Hadfield, Terry Atkinson.
Atkinson, yeah, Atkinson went wide there, got into the grass slightly, and that's what allowed Matthews and Proctor both through. Maybe he's struggling round here, Terry Atkinson, the championship leader coming into this race. He's won 4 of these 6 races so far, but race 7 not treating him particularly well. Into the final corners for the battle for second place. This looks like there's going to be 3 to go here, by the way, with the amount of time we've got remaining. It will indeed, so just over 3 minutes, but 3 laps indeed still remaining here, and a lot of pressure on the back of Scott Brown now, who has not been able to keep up with Scott McFall, but then again, nobody can so far this season. It's up to him now, though, to hold on to second position in this big battle.
That it is, and if he can do that is the all-important question, because you got to watch for Mr. Neil Kennedy coming up behind as we look on the back here. Neil Kennedy, a very feisty driver. And again, Andy White, the leader in Pro-Am, is looking to get even more out of this race today. If he can, he's found himself in a good position. Something has happened to Scott Bell in the background, as Scott Bell has had a bit of a moment here. We'll wait and see if Neil Kennedy can make this move, and then we'll check out the Scott Bell unfortunate moment that he's had here, as it looks like he's had a moment, and so has Vester.
Yes, we'll have a look later as these guys make their way through the McDonald's curve onto the back straight. It is Scott Brown still leading the way. White just defending a little bit. An off-track moment for Mark Brown further back, by the way, as Peter Duke tries to get close to him. That's important for the pole position in the next race, of course, and Duke's again not close enough. This circuit is renowned for being one where it's relatively difficult to overtake, and that's being proven right now. Although mistakes from Brown again here might well give Duke the chance. Even those gravelly and grassy moments are not allowing the second-placed Pro-Am driver any opportunity.
Yeah, and for Peter Duke, he's going to be a little frustrated because he should have been right there to capitalize. We're going to jump back up front really quick because everything is happening with Scott Brown here and Neil Kennedy. Neil Kennedy to the outside, Scott Brown to the inside. Hard on the brakes they go, not through. Look at Jack Holland and Andy White. Jack Holland trying to shoot the outside there and go the long way around. He's not able to make it work, and they are going to settle that out. But yeah, Peter Duke is going to be frustrated because he's been right there in the mix in positions where he thinks he probably is going to think he should have been close enough to go through. I do want to check out what happened to Scott Bell here while we have just a breathing moment. This is Scott Bell, and it looks like just into the final corner, locks up the rear axle, sends the car around.
That's not a great moment for him. Oh, careful! Oh, dear. He was hit, swiped by someone on the way past. Might have been... I couldn't give you a guess, actually, who that might have been. But anyway, no damage in this series, so they'll both get away with it anyway. This will be the penultimate lap then, with 1 minute to go. Scott McFall across the line one more time. Looks like he's on his way to his 7th win out of 7.
Yeah, Scott McFall is unstoppable here. And I said earlier, it's not impossible. You just have to bring the challenge. Oh, big run there, Scott Brown. Scott Brown. No, that's a lap down car. Okay. I thought that was Scott Brown going off, but that is them navigating a lap down car, and I thought that was going to go much worse than it did. I'm very glad to see everyone through and around, and that tells you, ladies and gentlemen, always keep your eyes on the road.
Or indeed, commentators, keep your eyes on the screen.
Also that, yes.
Anyway, I think, was that Kenny getting a lap? I don't know. I think it was John Kenny getting a lap down. Yeah, it was. So there we go. Anyway, no disaster for Brown. He's okay, and he'll carry on in second. Mark Brown also carries on in sixth. There's one lap to go. Is now crossed. Peter Duke might have his best chance yet here. Not only is there a lap car for him to use, but he's got a very good run out of turn number 2. He looks to the outside, though. He brakes late, hoping for a deep braking from Brown so that he can slip up the inside, but that's not going to happen. And again, he's struggling. He's going to have to use that lap car somehow.
Yeah, the big thing is he needs to be the one using the lap car and not allowing for Mark Brown to be the one to use the lap car. And I worry that that's where he's going to find himself, is Mark Brown is going to be able to take advantage of the lap car, and just that, he sends it up the inside, goes around. I think for Peter Duke, this might be his best chance to go around here. Oh, they're going to go side by. Oh, wow. Clean pass through. Peter Duke, stay brave. And now they're going to go side by side through with Duke and Brown yet again. Peter Duke said, I've got you. And now Mark Brown says, no, hold on. Not yet.
Wow. What a battle this is, and Brown's back through again. Meanwhile, into the final corner, by the way, Scott McFall is going to take 7 out of 7. He wins race 1 here at Oschersleben in the pro class as well, as Andy White come through the final corner as well in a stagnant battle for second. He will finish 4th overall, will he? Or will he drop back? No, he does indeed finish 4th and indeed win the Pro-Am class. And Mark Brown hangs on to the pole for race 2. Out in the AM class, a little bit further down, Harry Price has had a very good start to his TVG GR86 series campaign, minus that little bit of dust up in the background for Rylands. It's Harry Price who takes his first win in the AM class, and that's a good drive from him as well, just about 4 seconds ahead of Tim Walters, who will finish second. A race where it was difficult to overtake in the end, but one with big championship implications. Terry Atkinson in the AM class finishes down in 4th position.
Yeah, that was a huge race for several drivers making their way through, and kind of, again, Scott McFall just standing through. Pro-Am, that is a big statement there from Andy White to be where he's at. Peter Duke, I mean, what a stellar pass attempt from Peter Duke there at the very end to try to make his pass, not able to make it stick, but showing the effort. Harry Price, hello, welcome to TVG GR86s, and then Elaine McCain here being in a lower position than I think really he should have been with his performance, but that was our run. We'll pull up the results now for you.
Indeed. Let's have a look at the results of race 1. Scott McFall wins by 6 seconds this time, ahead of Scott Brown. It's Neil Kennedy and Andy White and Jack Holland who he fended off, with Mark Brown finishing in 6th place, just fending off Peter Duke. Newton Carvalho finishes 8th ahead of Dan Forster, with AM winner Harry Price, the final of those in the top 10. Lead Rylands and Alan McCain, 2 pros, finished 11th and 12th, with Tim Walters 2nd in AM. Then it was Mark Proctor, who was 4th in Pro-Am. Then Sean Atkinson, 3rd in AM. Adrian Hadfield first outside the top 15, with Terry Atkinson, championship leader, finishing 17th after re-overtaking Curtis Matthews towards the end there. 19th was Peter Woodmore, who had that big spin after contact with Nilton Carvalho. Stephen Wild finished in 20th place. Then it was John Johnston, just outside the top 20. Michael Vester, who finished just over a minute down. John Kenny and Scott Bell, both 1 lap down. In the meantime, warm-up is ongoing. We're about 4 minutes away from our second race. It will be 25 minutes in length. Time to thank the sponsors that make these broadcasts possible, starting with TVG, which stands, of course, for the Vape Guru, Norfolk's largest independent vape store on the high street and online. Visit them at thevapeguru.co.uk or on their Facebook in the description. A big thanks to our co-sponsors as well, TH Jordan. You can visit at www.thjordanltd.com. at Clark St James, clarkstjames.com in our descriptions as well. TS Livery Designs, who you can check out on Facebook in the description. Conspit.com, where you can check out them in the description as well. Techsport Racing have their Facebook and Instagram in the description too, along with Blue Angel Kennels, who have their Facebook in our description. Big thanks for all of those sponsoring the series this season, the TVG GR86 series. You may notice that in a few weeks' time, this series will be coming to an end, but don't fear that Tanso Racing Group will deliver more GR86 series racing for you on Sunday night, starting from the 3rd of November, so pretty much after this series finishes. In the real world, in your part of the world, Brad, they have the GR86 North America Cup. Well, here in iRacing and here at the Tanso Racing Group, we're having our own GR86 UK Cup instead, visiting Brands Hatch, Donington, Oulton Parks, Netterton, Knockhill, Silverstone and Cadwell Park over the course of 7 weeks, flying down towards Christmas, effectively taking in all the weeks we've got remaining until Christmas weekend from the 21st and 22nd of December. So make sure you join us back for that again after this season finishes. We don't have a GR86 UK Cup in the real life, so it's nice to have one, at least nice for me to have one in real life here, and looks like you'll be looking at a lot of circuits from over on this part of the world, Brad, in the near future. But you do have the GR86 North America Cup in real life, so we're replicating that very much with a UK version of that starting in November.
I'm going to be honest, I think the UK version is going to be fun, and I might have to tell James that he needs to find somebody to find my position, because I might want to race in that. That sounds like a fun series to go through and just do a nice little UK tour in what is a fun, feisty car with some very competitive racing here for the GR86s. Yeah, that sounds like fun. That's a good one. I'm glad to see this series continuing on, and I'm glad to see all of the sponsors here. It always is one of those whenever we hit this warm-up section and we go to thank the sponsors. I forget how many people actually support this series and support everything that happens here for this GR86. It's always one of those that I look back and I go, okay. There's a lot of people invested in this series, and there's a lot of people invested in seeing the success of this series and seeing the competitiveness of this series. So a big shout out to all of you. And yeah, I don't know about you, Ewan, but I haven't raced in a while, but I think I could get warmed up before we hit the 3rd of November to be competitive.
I've got to be honest, I much prefer watching these races than driving in them. It's not that I don't like the style of racing, but I don't like the way the car drives, so I like watching other people do it who know what they're doing instead. It's a lot more fun. So there you go. Hope to see you all back for that one, of course, in the UK Cup. Hopefully many of the drivers who are here tonight will be participating in that as well. 24 of them here tonight on the grid, which is absolutely fantastic as they just get through this warm-up session, or as you call it, a cool-down session. It's probably more accurate, really, for what we're actually getting here. It's not about getting yourself warmed up for the race. They already are, you would have thought, after that opening 20-minute race. The checker flag now flies, and we look like we're ready to go. Good evening again to everyone who is tuned in. Make sure you stay tuned for the next 25 minutes. It's the reverse grid race here from the TVG GR86 series. And having reversed the top 6, the pole sitter will be Mark Brown on the front after he held off Peter Duke towards the end of that opening race. He's alongside Jack Holland at the front. Andy White, pro sitter in Pro-Am, ahead of Neil Kennedy. Scott Brown and Scott McFall have also been reversed in the top 6. Peter Duke and Newton Carvalho will be next, and Dan Forster and Harvey Price. Goodness me. Harry Price in the rest of the top 10. Outside the top 10 is Lee Rylands and Alan McCain. In row 7, it will be Tim Walters and Mark Proctor. Sean Atkinson, who made up some points in that last race, will be alongside Aidan Hatfield. Terry Atkinson lost some. He will be alongside Curtis Matthews, who is battling with through much of that. Peter Woodmore and Stephen Wild round out the top 20 with John Johnson and Michael Vester on row 11 and John Kennedy and Scott Bell at the back. It's time to go racing again. 25 minutes for the second race here at Oschersleben. The reverse grid race always throws up some surprises. What are we going to get here this time round with 3 wide in the background as we go in towards turn 1 for the first time? Brown holds on to the lead and Holland holds on to second, but what about third? Neil Kennedy and Andy White going side by side. That's Kennedy making up 1 place and getting ahead of the Pro-Am pole sitter. On board with Rylands in the mid-pack. It's a lively start to race 2.
Race 2 is always a different beast than race 1 because none of the drivers hold back for race 2. They all know that this is the final hoorah, the final hoopla, and they decide to put the pace on the track and they send it through. And look at this, right on board here with Jack Holland, who is trying to chase down Mark Brown, and you got to keep your eyes in the back on Scott McFall and Scott Brown, who are going to be very, very feisty here early on. Peter Duke is one that I'm also going to be keeping my eyes on after his moments there in race 1, trying to get the pass up into the top 6, not able to get it. He's going to be a driver on a mission here as we come out of McDonald's for the first time. Look at the sea of GR86s running down, and everybody nice, pretty single file, and I don't see anything too wild happening yet, but give it time. It will be there.
It certainly will. It's the top 2 who are getting away at the moment. Brown and Holland, by the looks of things, into the final corners. Holland giving Mark Brown a real hard time now. On board with Peter Duke, who's got Scott Brown just ahead. He's been overtaken by Scott McFall on the start of this race. Scott McFall, that is, looking for his 8th win of the season so far. Brown pulls to the right-hand side immediately here, almost as if he's letting Holland through. Does he? No, not quite. I don't think Holland's close enough here. He'll look to the inside. He won't quite go for it. Then they're followed by Kennedy and Andy White. Scott McFall, Scott Brown to round out the rest of the top. Oh dear, it's top 6, side by side. Brown having to defend here from Holland, who just got up the inside. He snuck up the inside, but he didn't get anywhere, and he stays back in second place.
And remember, these cars are all about momentum conservation. They're not super powerful. They do have some power, but they're not gonna be able to just get up and go. You've got to conserve the momentum. I think of these as the big brothers to the MX-5, which is truly what they are. So if you have big battles like this where you get side by side, you're slowing each other down, all you are doing is opening up the pack for everyone behind you to start coming in and battling. And look at this timing table. The top 13 are all within about half a second of each other. Nobody in the top 13 has opened up a half-second gap except for McCain to Price and Forrester to Carvalho. And that is it. Walter's 1.3 seconds back from them, but it's not a lot. Here we go. Side by side go Brown and Holland. McFall and White are side by side in the background as well, and still Holland can't get the pass done, but I think Scott McFall has gotten himself up into 4th place here.
Yeah, looks like it. He has indeed got up into 4th position, and he is coming, that's for sure. He is on his way to the front. Scott McFall looking for his 8th win of the season. Great run out the final corner as well. He slides and catches it, and they weave to try and break the slipstream, but Fall doesn't bother following. Kennedy lifts off, I think, and just lets Scott McFall through. He cedes to the inevitable as White and Brown also go side by side a bit further back. It's Andy White who's going to lose the place, I think. Brown goes around the outside through the first pot, inside at the second. White goes wide. He's got to be careful of Peter Duke because he's coming up the inside of him here, and he's going to be absolutely nose to tail now. The Pro-Am lead being fought over fiercely here, and look at that. Up the inside goes Newton Carvalho, who we know has been quite aggressive today, going on the aggression here too. Past Peter Duke, who's now going to be looking over his shoulder at Dan Forster. Carvalho splits up the battle for Pro-Am victory.
Man, that was a hard-fought moment there, and that is going to be a race-deciding moment, I feel, as we go through this race. We're only 5 minutes into this 25-minute feature, and nobody has pulled a gap. Nobody has managed to run away with anything yet. We're still sitting where we are with these drivers coming through McDonald's here, absolutely sending some pace down, and you see everybody moving very, very quick here as we go. Look at the top 3 fan out here. Brown, Holland, and Scott McFall. Scott McFall going to go for a dive to the inside. Not able to make it there, and he is still in 3rd, but he is charging to the front of the field. Scott McFall trying to go for the 8 for 8 here today.
And he's still got 20 minutes in hand as well, don't forget. A long time remaining for Scott McFall into the final corner. He gets a decent run. Holland doesn't get the best exit there, and he can't follow the slipstream. He'd like to, but that would invite invite McFall down the inside, so he forced him to the outside for turn 1, but it does give you the inside for turn 2. It might be the ideal place to be. Here they go. Oh, Holland flies in and forces McFall just to brake a little bit earlier. That will keep Holland alongside just for now. It's a long right-hander though, through turn 2. Has McFall got clear? Holland looks to be still alongside and might try and use that advantage in towards turn 3. McFall brakes late. He goes round the outside. Holland tries to shove him out. He can't quite do it. And McFall is still there. He'll be on the outside for the triple left-hander. If he could do this, it would be spectacular. Round the outside through the first part. They're going to have to lift off for the second. He's very nearly in the grass. He's quite wide, but he's still on the inside, ready for the next hairpin. And now finally he gets the position. Holland held him off for ages. But now Scott McFall gets into second, and through goes Kennedy as well here by the looks of things. Into the chicane. No, Holland hangs on to third at least, but Scott McFall makes a long drawn out but very important overtake because Brown's off the road and Scott McFall's back in the lead.
Scott McFall just got handed the winning lottery numbers to the lottery draw for Sunday night. He fought that hard side by side, tooth and nail, and then all of a sudden, when Mark Brown knew what was coming, Mark Brown just small air sent it off, and here we go. Now Holland is going to open up and fight, but Scott McFall needs to very quickly find a gap and get away because we've got some feisty drivers here in the top 10 that are going to be looking to make a run, looking to make an attempt. They do not want Scott McFall to go 8 for 8 here and cement his championship. They do not want him to have this win yet again. They want to have their name on the top step. And for Brown and Holland, it is going to be a case of who is going to be the one to challenge, or is it Neil Kennedy that'll bring it through? They've got to sort that out very quickly because otherwise Scott McFall is going to just run away with this race.
Certainly is. In towards turn 3. I can't see anybody stopping Scott McFall from here. He had 20 minutes in hand when he got into third position, saw the 2 ahead that he needed to overtake, probably thought, okay, I'll do just that then. And he's gotten through in towards the lead of this race now. Spectacular from Scott McFall again, and he pulls that margin out to over half a second already. Andy White still leads in Pro-Am, and it feels like with the top 6 reversal almost settled now. I know Scott Brown is still 5th after, he's still where he started actually, after finishing second in the opening race. It does feel like a little bit we've settled into a similar rhythm that we had in the first race where there wasn't too many overtakes going on, but it was very close, especially for the lead in A class. Last time it was the Am class that was really close. This time it seems to be the Pro and Pro-Am classes that are all nose to tail.
Yeah, and it's not surprising for me to see these drivers so close, so competitive. Again, the first race drivers tend to be a little more conservative because they know that if they don't have a good finish in the first race, that when they get to this feature, it doesn't make a difference what they do because they're just kind of playing a little bit of recovery game. Now we've hit the feature race, it's all or nothing. You tend to see the drivers get a little more risk. They drive the car a little bit harder. They give a little bit more to this GR86 than they would otherwise. And while we've settled out of that sort of inverse of the top 6 of everybody getting into a more proper position, I'd say, we're still going to see plenty of action through us. Elaine McCain is now sitting sideways on the track. What has happened to him?
Oh, careful. He's reversing. It's probably the best idea. It looks like he came into contact with Tim Walters, I would say. Walters was off the road at the same time, and they were similar in the order. Now, what happened here? Walters hits the first curb. He's just gone very deep into turn 2 there. So it's unrelated, but there's McCain. He's already spun round on the inside.
All right, well, unfortunate to see that happen to them, but again, this is that moment where, you know, I say they give the car 5% more, and sometimes 5% more the car doesn't want to give, so you've got to be careful. I do want to check back here with Sean Atkinson, who is trying to hold off one Curtis Matthews. This is for P3 in the AM class battles. This has been brewing for a little bit. Curtis Matthews getting very feisty there, trying to swerve around to the inside. Feisty's been my word of the day, it feels like, and that's just how these cars feel. They feel very feisty. They feel like a cat whenever, you know, it's fighting for food. It's very, very feisty as they go through. And Curtis Matthews with a clean pass gets himself into 15th overall, but more importantly, he is on the podium for AM as they stand.
He is, and Terry Atkinson trying to follow through. Oh, he was on the inside and not through. He couldn't quite get through on that occasion. He will have another going towards turn 1, you'd expect. In another race, it looks like he's going to lose points to some of his rivals, but will it be to Sean Atkinson he's losing points? That would be a concern because of his proximity in the championship. Likewise, it would be a concern losing points to Tim Walters. And wide goes Atkinson. Sean Atkinson, that is. Letting Terry Atkinson down the inside. Now, there might have been contact, which is why Terry decided not to take advantage. I'm not sure. However, he seemed to make a conscious decision there not to take advantage of Sean Atkinson running wide.
Yeah, and that's one of those key signs to tell if there was a little bit of contact, is if the driver in front doesn't completely spin out and wreck. And I mean, hey, even sometimes they still do this, but sometimes if there is a little bit of contact and it opens that door, you don't take it, because it's just, that's the little bit of racing etiquette you'll see some of these guys have. I want to jump back up front here to the pros, because look at the absolute fierce python that is all of these GR86s. Look at this side by side. We go with Holland and Kennedy coming through with Mark Brown, and they run wide. There goes Holland.
Holland up on the curb through the third last corner, and he spun around. He needs to be careful getting himself back onto the circuit. He's picked a gap in the traffic to do so, and rejoins in 12th place. He's going to be 13th by the time that Woodmore goes past him. But it was always going to happen once he got up on the curb on the inside there. Kennedy, by the way, is very close to overtaking Brown now as well, as Matthews is gaining some time. Look at this. This is Kennedy trying to make it work on the inside in towards the first chicane. It's round the outside. It's a long way round, and Brown will hang on as a result. It's difficult to make a pass into there, admittedly. And so Brown hangs on for now, but then Scott Brown is going to be close in behind. So's Andy White, and then Carvalho, then Peter Duke as well. As meanwhile, there's been other goings on. Dan Forster seems to have dropped down the field dramatically, and also Mark Proctor did. So there's been a number of off-tracks in these last few moments.
Yeah, and as we see Kennedy here, I will tell you right now, for Mark Brown, my question to him is, how wide is a Toyota GR86, and what sort of wide body kit did you put on this car? Because Mark Brown is defending from Neil Kennedy like nobody's business while they go through McDonald's here. Let's check really quick what happened with Dan Forrester. This is the moment for Dan Forrester. It's taken him completely out of the race, I believe, as he goes through, and just a light wiggle of the rear end into turn 1 locked up the rear axle.
That looked technical to me. I don't think everything is all well there with that, with his machinery. Mark Proctor got loose through the final corner and spun around, hit the wall. No damage, of course, in this series, but nevertheless it will delay him by quite some way. Oh dear. That was weird.
That was Jack
Holland again. Yeah, I thought it was. How's he managed this then? He's sliding a little bit, he's trying to save it. Just a spin that took quite a long time to manifest itself. He gets himself going, back the right way again, very nearly hit by a few oncomers. John Kennedy also has had an issue while we've been away here by the looks of things. Plenty going on further down the field. And it's a very similar spin to what we saw from Forster there. So I don't know what's going on into turn 1, but 2 spins at a nearly flat out corner. Very bizarre.
We jump back here to live timing with Neil Kennedy, and Neil Kennedy, you saw having to catch the car. That's going to cost him big, as up around the inside is Scott Brown, and goes our Pro-Am driver Andy White is going to send it up the inside, go through. We'll jump back. Nilton Carvalho trying to find a run here, goes to the inside turns to the outside. You see he's holding just as close as possible to try to make this pass. Peter Duke also, let's not forget Peter Duke back here in P7. And where does Peter Duke find himself? Right on the tail end of this pack of cars that are fighting it out.
He's looking for positions and looking mostly to get past Andy White, but that's going to be quite tricky in the current situation, because there's 2 cars between himself and White. Into the high-speed chicane they go at the very end of the back straight. Just over 10 minutes to go here, by the way. We should get an extra 3 laps compared to what we got in the first race. That's what we're looking at here. An extra 3 laps for Scott McFall to enjoy, really, on his own. It looks like he's on his way to his 8th win in 8. Who knows who's going to finish in 2nd?
Yeah, second place is the big question mark. If you're Scott McFall right now, you are in no sort of a hurry. You're winding back a little bit, you're relaxing a little bit, and you're enjoying. Right now for Brown versus Brown is a big question. There's a big wiggle, though, from Andy White in the Pro-Am there. He got a little loose into turn one. I thought Neil Kennedy was going to have a peak there, but was not close enough to capitalize from that wiggle. We come down through, and yet again, it is Mark Brown leading Scott Brown. And we tend to see the Brown and the Brown together with each other battling through. Something has happened, though, to Curtis Matthews back in the background. I hate to report. He's going very, very slow. What happened to Curtis Matthews? Well, let us find out here. This is him coming down the main straight. This is going to be looking up the inside into one, and
oh dear. Very nearly hit the driver ahead of him and hit the brakes a bit too hard, trying to avoid, and then a few others had to avoid. It's very tricky too as well. And he gets back going in. Oh, my word. Someone across the curbs and avoids just about. But that was very close indeed to disaster for multiple drivers there. Curtis Matthews, I'm afraid, down to 19th. Meanwhile, Duke is making moves. Kennedy has been moving backwards here, I'm afraid. Duke is on the inside. He's trying to make it work and he just can't. He's trying to get closer to Andy White, but he's finding it very, very difficult. Not sure, though, what happened to Kennedy there, which lost him quite so many positions. And now suddenly he sits in 6th position after battling for 2nd earlier on.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to drop Neil Kennedy to where he's at through that run. I just happened to pick up on the timing table there showing Peter Duke catching him. And unfortunately for Peter Duke, he's found himself in this situation several times this race where he's been close enough to try a move, but he can't make anything stick. It's unfortunate to see because it's a real problem that Peter Duke has found himself in. And I don't know if it's a confidence thing or if it's just he's playing it very conservative, trying to just capitalize on being P2 in class right now, or what it is. But Peter Duke has had several moments through this race, I feel, and through Heat 1 where he could have been in for the race, but he's just backed out of it last second. I don't know. Maybe that's just an outside perspective looking in.
Still 8 minutes to go here in this race. Lap 11. We're currently on. This is the battle for 2nd position that has been the entertainment of the race, really. There hasn't been a group like this anywhere else in the field. It is Scott Brown. It's trailing Mark Brown at the very front of it, followed by Andy White, who's looking for these guys to just get on with it so he can get away from Peter Duke, who's at the back of the train. But they're not really listening to him, and why would they? In towards the high-speed chicane they go, under the bridge. Highest speed corner on this circuit through the right-hander, then opening it out for the left, which really means that you run onto the penultimate corner and then in towards the final corner as well. Carvalho's had a decent race here, I've got to say. Moved up a few positions so far. 3 positions moved up so far in the field, up to 5th position. He moved up a few in the opening race as well. I still think he'll get in trouble for hitting Peter Woodmore in the first race, but nevertheless, he's done nothing bad in this 2nd race by any means. He's just been smartly moving his way through the field.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, you pointed out Peter Woodmore and their little kerfluffle they had in the first heat. Peter Woodmore has managed to recover up into 10th place and is continuing to move forward. Lee Rylands is currently in P9, chasing down our AM leader of Harry Price, and is right there on the back and should clear him fairly quickly, I feel, as they go through. I wouldn't think that this will be too much of a moment for Lee Rylands. It's just going to be a matter of passing, and as I said, he runs it a little bit wide. It's one thing to catch, it's another to pass, and it's always something about these drivers. They see somebody in front of them, and they start racing a little bit harder, regardless of class, regardless of anything. They go from just running their laps to racing that much more.
Yeah, certainly. This is out of the McDonald's curve for drivers out front, and now Andy White's looking for more positions. Bit of a risk already, knowing, and he decides not to take the risk. I was going to say, with 2 positions already as a cushion to sit on, I'm wondering why he would want a 3rd. But he clearly does. And he looks to the outside again here of Scott Brown, who is in 3rd at the moment. He wants to take that overall podium position. We're just just over 5 minutes to go. We're going to have 4 laps to go as they cross the line here. Plenty of time remaining in this race for everyone to make their moves. And Kennedy will want to be one of them who is making moves here. He's close behind Carvalho. In the end, decides not to go for it into turn 1, deciding that pushing Carvalho back into line is a better idea.
Yeah, and that, I agree, getting back in line, better idea, settle through, follow along. Man, I can't talk either today, Ewan. I don't know what's happening, but we got Mark Brown here, and you see Mark Brown is taking a slightly different line to all the cars behind, and Mark Brown is trying to just set up that little bit of defense that he can on the rest of these cars, on Scott Brown, on White, Carvalho, Kennedy, and Duke. He knows he's the front of the train and he's got to be careful, so he's running a slightly different line trying to throw everyone off, and he's doing a fairly good job here as we jump back. Neil Kennedy still trying to make a look here on Peter Duke if he can find it. Ryland still has not gotten the pass done, but I do want to jump back. This is P16 because Hadfield and Proctor and Vester have been battling a little bit, and now it is Proctor with Vester going through. Somebody's off the side of the circuit. That is John Kenny again off the side of the circuit. We're not going to compound for John Kenny's day. He is just unfortunately found himself in 22nd running through. We've lost Wild, we've lost Bell, but there's battles through the field going, and another one is this man here, Jack Holland, trying to chase down Sean Atkinson for P13 overall.
Unfortunately for Holland, he's not made a pass that has improved his class position in some time. It's been a bit of a struggle for him this race, unfortunately, in terms of recovering from that incident. Anyway, has been a bit of a struggle. So he's still looking to make his way through, but no points gained from this, and there's no points gained for quite a few of these overtakes here. There he goes. Oh, no. Bit aggressive moving to the inside, really. He scrubbed off a bit too much speed, and that meant that he will stay 14th. Further up front, Mark Brown still leads Scott Brown, as in the background, Hadfield very nearly gets in the wall. Holland looks like he'll finally drag past Sean Atkinson. It'd be smart here to just let him go, I think, in towards turn 1, and by showing him the inside at 2, he does indeed let him through, so that is settled. Battle for second position, Mark Brown versus Scott Brown, is a lot closer than the others, I've got to say. At various times, there are gaps emerging in this group, but they all seem to come back together again. Mark Brown, not the quickest in this group for sure, but he is defending well, and if you were to hold on to second, it would be a testament to his driving, really.
Yeah, I really agree that Mark Brown is impressing me right now. He is putting up the defensive masterclass. He's not the fastest. He's not going through and putting down blazing lap times compared to everyone. 136.9 from Scott McFall versus a 137.4 last time from Mark Brown. But what Mark Brown is doing is holding all of these other cars back. He's driving with consistency. He's driving with that little bit of finesse, and he is frustrating every car behind him right now because they have not passed him. And with 2 minutes to go, they should have 2 more laps of action through here as we go around. And this is the point where, well, we saw what happened when some drivers got frustrated during the heat race, and we're not seeing that here in the feature, thankfully. But we are seeing an attempt here to go around the outside to the inside, and Brown versus Brown, and Mark Brown by millimeters is going to hold Scott Brown behind.
Just about. I thought that was the moment where Scott Brown could finally get himself through, but no. Andy White feels the group stacking up here and looks a little bit restless. Peter Duke will be as well, and they all defend. And there goes Carvalho. We've seen him not afraid to make a move, possibly the least afraid of anyone in this race. It's been difficult to make moves today, but Milton Carvalho has been an exception. Down the inside he goes, and he's through into 4th position. Then follows Kennedy, and White all of a sudden is side by side for the class lead. Peter Duke looks to the outside, and no, he can't get it done. He'll have 1.5 laps to attack Andy White, who has held off the pressure because of those pro drivers for nearly 25 minutes now.
Andy White's race just went from a comfortable follow-along lapping session to probably the most restless he's been in 25 minutes, because all of a sudden his chance of a class win is going to just drop if he is not careful here. We continue through, and our leader, let's check where our leader is coming through on the track right now. He is going to be coming across, taking the white flag here, and you can see Barney on the right hand side with the white flag. There he goes through, and this is the gap as they stand 9.5 seconds. There's Scott McFall. Here comes Mark Brown, and the sea of GR86 is behind him. And yes, this includes all of those pro cars we've talked about, and our Pro-Am battle. But that is what 9.5 seconds looks like. One more lap of action to go.
Yeah, Scott McFall has been cruising for some time now. He's left this group behind him. When he came through, of course, it was like this. That's really how long this group has been so close. On board we go with Andy White. Looking up at the pros ahead, which are now finally splitting apart, it looks like. Carvalho doesn't have the speed to stick with the two Browns. Duke can't get alongside White here at the moment. Buddy's looking on the exit of turn 3. Is he alongside for the triple left-hander? If he is, there's a chance. If he is, oh no, there, he's not quite. Andy White goes round the outside, and now Duke is running out of chances.
Yeah, this is Peter Duke. This is where desperation is going to set in. He's got just moments to try to make this happen, and very, very few passing opportunities left here if he can get them to set up. We go into McDonald's here, and you see he's really, really running this GR86 on the ragged edge. He's trying to get the pass. Same thing for Mark Brown versus Scott Brown. This is probably one of the final passing opportunities these two have, and it is going to be Scott Brown looking around. He's not close enough to make the pass. Back in the background, Peter Duke's not close enough for the pass, but it is Scott McFall coming around the final corner here, Ewan.
Scott McFall goes 8 out of 8 here in the TVG GR86 series. Once again, the winner here at Oschersleben. Further behind, oh, there's contact! Scott Brown went for it! Mark Brown goes around! Peter Duke hits him! And so Andy White will win in Pro-Am. Who's going to finish in 6th? It's going to be Mark Brown. Peter Duke will finish 7th. In the end, it won't matter for Duke, but for Mark Brown, it certainly will, as Scott Brown makes contact with him at the end. Harry Price wins in Am after a fairly leisurely race for him. But what on earth went on into that final corner?
We'll go back and get a replay of this and how this happened. We'll check in up here in the front with Scott Brown, Mark Brown. They're coming through the final couple of corners here. And this is Scott Brown behind Mark Brown. Mark Brown runs through. This is coming into the final corner, and we see Mark Brown ramps the sausage curb, goes through. Scott Brown has the run. Mark Brown tries to block him, and Scott Brown just has... And then, well, for Peter Duke, there was nothing to be had there.
Well, it also thankfully didn't matter for Duke because he will still finish 2nd. I don't know, I feel like Scott Brown was alongside and Mark Brown did take the apex there as if he wasn't really. So we'll see what the stewards make of that one after the race because that will be looked at, I am sure. Let's have a look at the standings though, as they are now, provisional of course, at the end of this race. It is Scott McFall who wins, this time by 12.3 seconds, about double his advantage, at this time over Scott Brown, who finishes 2nd for the 2nd time. Newton Carvalho on the podium this time, ahead of Pro-Am winner Andy White. Neil Kennedy and Mark Brown next, picking up the pieces there, and then Peter Duke, who finished 2nd in Pro-Am. The Am winner, Harry Price, finishes in 8th overall, ahead of Lee Rylands and Peter Woodmore to round out the top 10. Jack Holland recovered to 11th after his bounce over the curves through the 3rd last corner. Tim Walters and Terry Atkinson were 2nd and 3rd in Am, ahead of Sean Atkinson. It was Mark Proctor and Adrian Hatfield, separated by just 6 tenths of a second in 15th and 16th. Curtis Matthews and Alan McCain, 17th and 18th. 19th went to Michael Vester, ahead of John Johnson. And the final driver to finish on the lead lap, Dan Forster, despite his spin that we saw in towards turn 1. John Kenny finished 2 down, Stephen Welch 7 down, Scott Bell 9 down at the end of that race. Well, difficult to overtake at times at Oschersleben, I think it's fair to say. However, a good finish there to that big group for 2nd place that just wouldn't really go away.
Yeah, that group for 2nd shows the strength of the GR86, honestly. And I think that is really the perk of this car is when you get drivers that are very competitive on pace, very close together, you end up in situations like what we saw where they just can't get away from each other, and it produces some amazing racing through and through, regardless of the track, regardless of the opinion of the track. It's genuinely, I'm going to say, the car that produces some amazing racing here, and the drivers just add to it every time. I absolutely love this series.
Just while we're waiting for people to come in for an interview, and if they don't, we'll sign off in a second. Imola next week, it's going to be a little bit more of a Grand Prix sort of open style circuit than this one, although there's plenty of corners to make the difference as well. I wonder what we're going to see there.
Yeah, I think Imola is going to be action-packed, to say the least. And if you don't know the Imola track, I would say look up the Imola track, because I think it has everything that these GR86s need to produce some amazing racing. It's really, really going to be a treat to look at. And again, just a few weeks left here in the season before the season is over, and then we get to go forward for our British tour.
Absolutely. Well, it doesn't look like we're going to get anyone for an interview here tonight, so we will sign off here from round 4 here at the Oschersleben. This has been the TVG GR86 series here for round number 4. Join us again next week for Emily, myself and Brad will be back with you again, same time, same place. Subscribe so you make sure you don't miss the broadcast. I've been Ewan Leary alongside Bradley Dalton. Until we see you in 1 week's time for the Imola round 5, it's goodbye for now.